Hi guys, welcome to this tutorial. We're going to cover the topics of average, variance, and standard deviation for group data. We're going to build the frequency chart, and we're going to talk about the kurtosis and slant concepts. First, you need to identify, we're going to work with low limit, up limit, and absolute frequencies. First, you need to get the addition of the absolute frequencies to obtain the n value. Then you have to calculate the amplitude, which is equal to the up limit minus the low limit, and copy the formula. For the class mark, you need to add the low limit and the up limit and divide it over 2. And then copy the formula. For the relative frequency, you need to divide each of the absolute values over the total n. Remember, to make it static, you can add this symbol and then copy the formula. For the accumulated, you need to copy the first absolute value and then add it to the second absolute value here. If you copy the formula, at the end you're going to realize that this number is the same as this. For the relative accumulated, you need to divide this number over the total n, and again you have to make it static by using this symbol and then copy the formula. To obtain the average, you need to multiply the xi times fi. So it's the class mark times the absolute frequency, and then copy the formula. You need to get the addition, so you can copy this formula and paste it like this. So the average will be equal to the division of this over this. If you obtain this number, you can go back and forth with the decimals by using these points. For the variance, you need to complete these two columns. So let's work in the first one, which is xi minus the average that you already calculate to the second. Remember, you need to make it static by using this symbol, and then you can copy the formula. Next, you need to multiply this times the absolute frequency. Copy the formula, and then you can copy this formula into this. Don't worry again for the decimals, you can round it till 2, 3, or whatever you are looking for. The variance will be equal to this division over the n, but remember, you are working with samples, so this number you need to subtract it in 1. An advice that I'm giving to you guys is that if the problem mentioned the word population, you need to work with formulas related to population. If the problem doesn't mention any word, or it mentioned the word sample, you have to do it in this way. So for the variance, you divide this number over this. And then finally, you use this formula in Spanish, which is the square root. So the standard deviation will be equal to 17.53. Now, for the slant, we need to consider this example in which we have 11 classes or categories and an x value per each class. So you need to get the average first, because we're working with non-group data. In this situation, you have only to add the total x values and then divide it over the total classes or categories, which is in this case 11. Now for the variance, you need to complete these two columns. So let's work in this. You need to subtract the x minus the average. Remember, to make it static, you need to consider this symbol. Now you can copy the formula with no problems at all. To make it to the square, you have to multiply this to the second and make the addition. If you notice, the addition is equal to 4,760, and the variance will be equal to this value over the total classes or the total categories. But because we're working with sample, you have to divide over the subtraction, in this case 11 minus 1. So the final variance will be equal to this over this. The standard deviation is using this formula in Spanish. The median is quite simple because you need to consider only the formula in Spanish. get all this column, don't worry, you can go in this or till this, and then the result will be the same. You can try it later if you want to. So the median is 35, and finally the person or the slant person will be equal to this. Remember the formula, it's 3 times the subtraction of the average minus the median and everything over the standard deviation. So in this case it's minus 14. It means that it's asymmetric to the left. The calculations for the population are the same, but instead of dividing over 10, you will divide it over 11. Remember, the trick is to read the problem and identify if it is a population when the word exists, or when there is no word, or the word is sample. Now, for the kurtosis, you need to consider this structure. This is non-group data still, but we have an x value and an f value. So for the average, you need to multiply first x times f. So let's do it for the first line, and then copy the total formula. Remember, the addition of this over the addition of this will be equal to the average. So here the result is 5.71. For the variance, you need to complete this column. So let's do it. In this case, you need to subtract each x value minus the average that you already calculated and make it to the square. Remember, you need to make it static by using the symbols, and then you can easily copy the formula. Make the addition sorry for that, and then remember the variance will be equal to this over the total n, but we're working with samples, so this is n minus 1. Finally, the variance will be equal to this value over this, and the standard deviation is the formula in Spanish. So for the kurtosis, you need to complete these two columns. So let's work. For this one, you need only to put this and make it to the square. Copy the formula. Don't worry if you have this, because you can work in the addition of the decimals, because sometimes the numbers are quite big or quite low. Make it into 2 and you'll be fine. Now you need to multiply this value times the frequency, and then copy the formula. For this, you need to get the total addition. So you can copy this formula and add it into the correct column, so you can have all values. Now for the kurtosis, remember that you need to divide it over the s to the 4th. So you can put the variance to the 2nd, or the standard deviation to the 4th, and still you're going to obtain the same value. So it's your choice if you divide over the variance to the 2nd or over the standard deviation to the 4th. As you can see, although the formula is different, the values are the same. Now for the kurtosis, remember, you need to divide, in this case, the total of the resolution over this and make it minus 3. But remember, you need to consider brackets to make first the division and then the subtraction. Finally, you have a value of 170.71, which is more than 0 and means that the form is leptokurtic. So here you have the examples. I'm expecting for you to obtain the results that we already practiced, and please go for tutoring if you have more questions. Goodbye.